Welcome back to Light the Fuse, your one-stop shop for all things Mission Impossible. And we have a very fun episode today. Charles, do you want to tell people who we're talking to?
We're talking to Josh Tate, who did behind-the-scenes footage for Rogue Nation. We've talked before with some of the behind-the-scenes footage people. They have great stories. And so, it was great to get Josh. I believe Ben Rosenblatt hooked us up with him. It's nice to get, I feel like, it's good to get more Rogue Nation people on the show.
Yeah, I was going to say that we focus a little bit more on Rogue Nation a few episodes this summer. So I'm glad we're giving it its due, and this is part of that. But yeah, I mean, if you've heard our chats with Anthony Giacchino and people like that, you know what you're in store for. And it's a wild ride, even just shooting behind the scenes stuff on a Mission Impossible movie. So
yeah, and before we get into it, I actually have a couple little things to bring up, if that's all right with you, Drew.
Sure, go ahead.
So one thing is this past week we unveiled the new vinyl from Mondo. It was the Ghost Protocol soundtrack. The Michael Giacchino score is now out. Or not out, but you can order the vinyl from Mondo. And we unveiled the artwork this week in a very fun way on Instagram. And you can go check out our Instagram profile at LightTheFuse-Pod and look there. You can see the little mosaic thing that we did to unveil the artwork. It's really awesome. Not only do we have to talk about the vinyl itself, though, what else, Drew? What else is part of this package that you have to do?
Well, I mean, if you want, when you buy this new vinyl, for just a few dollars more, you can get this amazing box that houses all of the Mission Impossible Mondo vinyls. And I don't want to brag to people. I don't want to shove this in people's faces, but you and I are some of the first human beings to have this box.
I'm going to shove it in their faces. I've got this thing, and it is incredible. The artwork is so good, and putting all of them into the box felt so good. And I didn't know how, I didn't know if the box was going to be a little flimsy or whatever. It is solid, and it is fucking awesome.
Oh, yeah. I've already loaded it up with all the other scores, and it weighs so much. It's about 400 to 500 pounds all put together, and it's just a handsome piece.
Yeah. We always talk about how Mission Impossible doesn't have enough collectible items. Like, this is the collectible item, I feel like. It's Correct. So great.
I should bring it into the Beat Lab and just put it up here. I think it would be a great piece to add to the collection.
For sure.
Yes, and you can get links to both of these on our Twitter as well. So please order these. We love our friends at Mondo. We want Volume 2 of this box set to come out, which will include, conceivably, Rogue Nation through Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 2. And hopefully that comes out in 2024, and we'll have another box set, and it'll be great.
Yeah, I'm so excited. It's so amazing, and now we've got the title for the next couple of missions. I assume that for both it'll be Dead Reckoning Part 1 and Dead Reckoning Part 2. So exciting. Obviously, check out our CinemaCon recap from last week if you haven't heard that. So I have one other item before we get into your favorite part of the show.
Oh, sure.
So because it's a Rogue Nation episode, I figured I would bring this up. Someone emailed us, one of our listeners, Andrew Edmonds. He emailed us about Ethan's photographic memory. He has a theory, and I wanted to share it with you.
Okay.
To see what you think. He says, throughout the movies, I don't think Ethan has ever demonstrated that he has a photographic memory. So the best we can say is that we do not know whether he has one or not. I know at the end of Rogue Nation, it does appear Ethan has memorized banking information. However, I'm almost certain that this is a bluff. At this point, Ethan would have nothing to gain from actually memorizing all of the info. Actually, it is even worse than this. If he did actually have all the information stored in his head, it opens the possibility for him to give the information to the syndicate under torture. I don't think he would allow for that possibility. Much better would be to just memorize enough to bluff that he has memorized it all. This would allow him to paint himself as a valuable asset without allowing for the possibility of the syndicate receiving the funds. So I think in reality, when Ethan destroyed the banking information, it was really destroyed, and there was no possibility for the syndicate to ever receive the funds, and he lied to his own team about the photographic memory to give them assurance in the plan, which worked very well. All right, that's it. That's the theory. What do you think, Drew?
I don't think he would ever lie to his team.
Okay.
Ever.
That's valid.
That's the hitch in the plan.
I feel like I think he would mislead them, but in the end would always tell them the truth.
Yes. Okay.
Don't you think he would mislead them maybe to execute some plan and then afterwards reveal to them only what they need to know?
Yes, but also this kind of really comes in conflict with our love of his little personality traits, like his drawing skills,
Yes.
his on the go disguises. So I'm going to choose to think that he still has a photographic memory.
Okay.
Although this is very convincing evidence.
It's a good point, but I also choose. I like to believe that he has the photographic memory because it's amazing to think of all those crazy skills that he has.
I feel like he couldn't draw as well too without that memory.
There you go.
You know, when he draws Lane, you know, that's like
Yeah. He's drawing from memory these people's faces. Yeah.
So okay, that's great. Well, I love these theories. Please send in your theories. You can email us or, you know, hit us up on social media. We always love to hear your theories. And you know what I always love to do, Charles, is to give my shout outs.
Let's do it.
So,
who brought us the episode?
Well, this episode is brought to you once again by Jeremy Dillon, but instead of our usual shout out to his podcast, we're going to point people in a different direction, which is to check out Imogen Clark, who is an artist that he works with. And she has a new single called Enemy that is available on SoundCloud and I'm sure on Spotify and Apple Music. And he just wants us to point people in her direction. And he says that her favorite Mission Impossible is actually Rogue Nation. So chances are maybe she'll enjoy this show. Maybe not. Who knows?
She might already be a listener. You don't know.
That's true. She could love every episode so far. We also want to thank John B., who's been with us for so long, and Elvis Ripley, who's a new sponsor, but someone who we really appreciate as well. So I want to thank everybody. And I think Elvis was really inspired by Rogue Nation, too. So hopefully he'll get a kick out of this episode.
Yeah.
So we will be back afterwards to wrap things up. Welcome back to Light the Fuse, and we are so thrilled to be joined by Josh Tate. Now, Josh, do you want to tell people what your role in the Mission Impossible saga is?
Sure. I was the the BTS EPK guy for Mission Impossible Rogue Nation.
Okay.
They're on set every day, did all the editorial work with the team that we assembled, and then ultimately delivered them, and Paramount sent them out to the world.
That's so cool. So you were there the entire shoot?
I was there every day. I was actually there for the first 2 months of prep because this was the first time that Bad Robot had ever done EPK, like had been responsible for it internally. And we wanted to make sure we didn't miss anything. So we just decided to be there every day. It was great. I went to London for 9 months and we were there every day, which is weird, I know, because usually these days, BTS EPK, you're there for a period of time or it's more scheduled, whereas we were there always, every day. Me and Mike Reyes, who was the other camera guy that we hired for the show.
Wow. Did things change from those 3 months that you were in pre-production to what was actually in the movie? I mean, do you remember?
If you watch the featurettes, there is very little prep in there, because not that the prep wasn't interesting. It's just that once you start shooting, it's so much more interesting that we ended up not using very much of it at all. But what it did do, which I think is super helpful for anyone doing BTS or EPK, was that we got to know everybody. So often you're sort of a part, you come in as part of the marketing department and you're not seen as a crew member. But I think we were, because we'd had all that time and been around everyone for so long that they let their guard down, which is exactly what you want to happen. You don't want people to think they're being photographed. You want them to feel comfortable with you there all the time. And they eventually forget that the camera's rolling. And that's, I think, where you get some really great, candid, personal stuff with the cast and the crew.
I think with Rogue Nation, they really were pushing the whole, he's doing his own stunts. Maybe even more so than Ghost Protocol. Was that sort of part of the, at least initial conversations about why you were documenting so much?
No, that ended up coming up, I think, more towards the end when we had assembled everything and they're trying to, you're always trying to figure out when you're marketing a film, what is what's going to land, what's going to resonate with audiences. And that's where they came up with that. To be fair, Tom was always doing his own stunts. And I think everyone who was close to the production knew that. He was doing his own stunts on Ghost Protocol. He was doing his own stunts on 3. He's been doing his own stunts forever. But I think they realized that, particularly with the plane, because when you see the plane stunt, it's very easy to imagine that it's a green screen or that it's something else or it's digital. So I think they realized they had a real opportunity there to let people know this is real. It was real. It was out at Wittering Air Force Base north of London. It was freezing cold. And that was Tom. Tom was on the side of the airplane.
Yeah, we actually did talk to his stunt double for 1 and 2. So he did have a stunt double at one point.
Well, a lot of times, no. Well, what will happen with the stunt double a lot is it's not so much a double as it is when they're prepping the stunt for safety and for camera,
right? It
makes more sense. It's the same way you have a stand-in. The stand-in for Tom on Rogue Nation was a guy named Christian Black, and sure he would stand in and be there, but for when we're filming, it was always Tom. It was always Tom for everything we did.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the plane sequence? You were there, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was it like watching him do that?
It was one of those things where it was afterwards that it really sort of landed how sort of crazy it was. There were other stuff that we shot that day. So if you've seen the movie, you know the scene where he's running along the wing of the plane and where he's sliding off and then to catch the door in terms of the continuity of the film. And then him on the door was, I think, the last thing we shot. I think they got everything else first. It was weird. First of all, it was freezing. Tom had, just his suit on. He couldn't really wear, much underclothes because you could see it. You could tell if he did. And so it was so cold. It was, it was free. It was like, when I say freezing, I mean, it was like 32 degrees that day up at Wittering. And yeah, they tied, they did secure him to the plane. I mean, they're not crazy. You have to be safe with these stunts. But I couldn't, it was hard to imagine. Mike was the other cameraman and he was in the plane while they were doing it and record. And there's some of that in the featurettes that we did where he's showing Chris and everyone's kind of laughing because I think they probably got up to about 5,000 feet, and the A400, which was the plane they were using, is able to fly reasonably slow and stay aloft. But when I say reasonably slow, it's like 300 miles an hour or something, whatever it was. So people were just kind of laughing. They couldn't believe it. Like, Tom is outside of this airplane. You can see, we have footage of people pointing at the door. And then we were lucky, because the challenge you always run into with any stunt is, where do you put the camera? And they had built a special sort of casing housing for the camera on the outside of the plane. But we couldn't put our camera in there because the film camera was already in there. And luckily, the A400 had a built-in camera system that it used for the pilots, to be able to. And that's the footage that you actually see in the film is, the wing camera shooting down at Tom. It was nuts. We didn't see it till afterwards. So we didn't really know what we had, which was a little scary because we knew it was a cool stunt and we were shooting most of it either from inside the plane or on the ground. But the stuff where he's aloft it came weeks later when we actually saw it. And we're like, oh my God, this is great. The best part's when you can see the wind just take over and Tom's like fluttering in the breeze.
How many times did he go up?
I think it was 7 or 8. And what was crazy about it too was they would just land and then go again. It wasn't that they would land, take a break, warm up,
get a Gatorade,
get them some hot cocoa or something, or some hot Gatorade. But no, they would land, they would taxi, and then they would just do it again, and you could hear it over the radio. Let's go again. And I think they did it. It was 7 or 8 times when they did. It was, and when Tom got off the plane, he was very cold. Because when you think that it's freezing on the ground, if you're up 5,000 feet, you're much colder. If you watch he's not wearing gloves. He's holding onto a piece of frozen metal going 300 miles an hour. In a way, that was, for me, the hardest part of the stunt because the conception of it is, great. He's on the outside of an airplane. The plane's in the air. We have, stunt rigging to protect him and keep him safe. But things like the cold, things like Chris McQuarrie talked about it, the possibility of a bird. And then Tom talked about it when they were, they had to scrub the runway because as you're taking off, you're going a couple hundred miles an hour. Pebbles and rocks. I think Tom talked about a rock hitting him in the chest, and then it felt like a bullet. So it was all manner of crazy, man. It was, when I think back about it, it's funny when I talk about it, it's hard to stay focused too much because every memory comes back to you at once, and it's sort of hard to sort them out and present them in a logical way because it was just such an experience. And it was just for 2 days. We're at Wittering, and then, then it was back to the grind.
And when he got done, so you said like it was a long day, obviously he's super cold. Could you see him did he finally just like kind of, did his body give out after that day? Like was he physically shivering? I mean, what was the, what did he do at the end of that day?
Probably took a bath, I would imagine. That would be, yeah.
Probably did. When he was on the runway with us, you could tell he was cold. I mean, there's just no way. I don't think that's diminishing anything about Tom Cruise that, yes, he experiences cold weather the way we do. But he's also just he's so tough. Everyone who works with Tom, I think, you guys have talked to all these people. That's the thing that comes through is he's all in on the movies. He's willing to do whatever it takes to get a great shot, a great sequence. So yes, he was cold. The creepiest thing though was as he gets off, and I think there's a brief shot of it in the one of the featurettes we did, is they had to put a contact lens in his eye that was almost the circumference of his entire eye. It's like a giant contact lens.
Whoa.
And the reason they had to do that was because otherwise he wouldn't be able to keep his eyes open with the wind. So there's a shot that we have where you literally see someone pop it out, and I don't know if either of you wear contacts, but imagine your own contact lenses and they're 10 times larger. Like it's all the way up in his eyeball.
Oh my God.
Obviously EPK and BTS is a part of the marketing kind of like system, right? Mm-hmm. When you were done with that footage, did you think, oh, this is going to be like the entire campaign? Is this?
Yes and no, because Here's the thing, in retrospect, yes.
Okay.
For sure. But when you're in the middle of it, you don't know what's coming next. You've read this in the way the Mission movies are constructed. It's very much stunt forward, and then they build the story around the big action sequences. Like the action, and it's because the action sequences they're complex, and they have to be done safely, and there's a lot of thought and money that goes into doing them well. And so, but when you don't know what's going to happen next, you don't know in terms of, again, where your camera's going to be, what you're going to be able to capture. It certainly felt significant. I will tell you that. When he got off the plane, and I think there were paparazzi that had a few photos in the newspapers. So the world knew it was a big deal. We certainly knew it was a big deal, but we also knew that other big deals were coming, such as, the craziest one was the street chase through the Casablanca alleys. That was just insane. They were going 90 miles an hour through those alleys, and people were constantly, the people of Casablanca were constantly breaking through the lines. And then we're pulling them back, or other people were pulling them back, and it felt really scary. It felt very visceral because those cars are loud and they're fast, and these are people just trying to get back to their houses, and it was wild. The whole movie was wild. And look, the other thing too, I didn't bring this up. This is the first time I'd ever done it.
Right.
Mission Impossible was my first movie. I'd made other shorts, but I'd never done something like that before, and so I was completely unprepared and ready to be really awed by the whole experience. And it was tough, but it was also like, it was overwhelming. It was great.
Right. And the plane too was at one point, I believe, the beginning of the second act as well. Right. Mm-hmm. So did you watch as that kind of got moved around in the movie? Yeah,
you sort of experience. I'd worked at Bad Robot for a long time by then already, and that's sort of the way a lot of these bigger movies work these days. They can be a little more modular, especially action movies, just because they're not as plot dependent as, say, a police procedural, where if things are out of order, they suddenly don't make sense.
Right.
Whereas with those, you can sort of. I don't think they decided that until much later in the editing process too, which I wasn't, the film side of the editing process we weren't involved with, obviously. But I remember, reading the script and then seeing the finished film. It felt pretty close, honestly. It didn't feel like there had been a lot of too, big changes, but it certainly felt like, oh, I thought this was going to be there, but now this is there. Right. And then there was some stuff that was shot and not put in the movie, which happens all the time. Well, I hope that answers your question. I'm not sure that was a great answer.
Yeah, I mean, we've also heard a lot of stories about Bad Robots, kind of scrappy, them building the Millennium Falcon in a conference room or whatever to pick up shots, weeks before the release of Star Wars or whatever.
Yep.
Were you kind of privy to that process too?
Well, we did that that was more Ghost Protocol, shooting some of those scenes at Bad Robot, because Brad needed a few shots. It's typically just inserts, like tiny things that they wanted, like Tom climbing the Burj Khalifa. They wanted a shot of his hand in a very specific way on a piece of glass, so we ended up just shooting that on the roof of the building. But for Mission 5, it ended up all being in England. In terms of, I mean, we did go on location to shoot stuff, but that was not something, and plus I was just so knee deep into post, because we cut a lot of featurettes. I think we ended up with over 100 minutes of featurettes for the film. And we didn't interview Tom until May, because Tom wanted to see the film first. And so we're in LA cutting our featurettes around what we hope Tom will add to it, because we didn't know yet. And then we all fly to London. Oh, this is a great story. So we fly to London, and Tom's on a tight schedule. All of these guys are on tight schedules. And so we get there, we try to get our gear lined up and our location lined up and get the location without any problem. And then the gear, because of the insurance requirement, ended up taking quite a while. We didn't get it until the night before, after the place had already closed, that we actually knew we would have lighting and cameras and stuff. And so then we go the next day. Thank God it all worked out. And then they told us Tom would be there between 9 and 1. And we were just, great. He'll be here at 1. We have plenty of time. He showed up at 9. And then he and I talked for 2 hours about the film. It was wild. It was a lot to take in, and then trying to keep track of what we're talking about with him, with what we need him to say for some of these featurettes to work properly. Otherwise, we'd have to re-edit them, which we did as well, because he did add some new material that we hadn't planned for. Yeah, but in terms of the post stuff on Mission, that was pretty much out of our hands at that moment. It really became a Chris and Tom partnership. And I think you guys see that now. That was the first movie where it really became like, oh, we're not going to have a different director every time. It's always going to be Chris McQuarrie. And they clearly have a different relationship and sort of a symbiotic relationship than I think he maybe had with other directors.
Wow, so you felt that during the shoot?
Oh, yeah, you could tell. Actors are always going to be close to their directors, and obviously if the movie's going well. But I do think there was something to it, because Chris had helped so much on the writing. He'd done some writing on Ghost Protocol. He'd done writing on Valkyrie. Clearly, Tom trusted him. And I got to see it. It was great. I got to see it up close, because BTS is the greatest job, because you don't really have a job other than to be there with a camera. And so I was able just to sit there at the monitor every day. And I shot it on a tiny little Panasonic. And I wanted to shoot on a DSLR because, again, I didn't want people to realize they were being recorded. And so I was able to stand there every day with Chris and Tom and just see their interactions and shoot a lot of their interactions. And Tom is great about BTS. Some actors feel it's intrusive, but I think he understands it's part of what makes Mission special, is you get to see how we make the films. And so he was great about it. And so, yeah, I did notice that they really felt like friends as well as colleagues, which is obviously great for them.
Did they ever tell you to buzz off?
Never buzz off. There was some stuff that we didn't shoot just because, it was potentially sensitive. Like when actors are doing love scenes, you're not going to, or any sort of scene where they're physically vulnerable. It's not just BTS. It's, you typically reduce the amount of people on set anyway, because it's hard to do those things with 20 people watching, much less 100. But by and large, no, we were allowed to shoot everything we wanted.
Wow.
One of the scariest moments, it didn't happen to me, it happened to Mike Reyes, the brilliant young cinematographer that I brought with me. So the first things we shot were Vienna. We shot the Opera House first. And one of the very first shots it was raining in Vienna, so we shot the interior where they go into the Opera House. And, in the movie, you see Tom looking down. And so Mike was at the very top of the Opera House looking down. And we hadn't really met Tom, and we said hi to him. But we hadn't really talked to him about BTS or what he wanted from it. And all of a sudden, Mike comes downstairs and he's like, Tom just pulled me aside and told me exactly how to shoot everything for the film. He's like, make sure you're low, make sure you're getting everything. And Mike, at the time, had just graduated from Art Center in here in Southern California, 23, 24 years old. Here comes Tom Cruise saying, and Mike also had never done this before. He was a cinematography student. He was a friend of mine who recommended him to me, so we hired him. But yeah, scary. But it was great. Tom's great about BTS. He's one of the easiest actors I've ever had to do it with.
You said you were up close, able to see all these Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise interactions throughout the entire shoot. Were there ever moments where they disagreed on something, and how did they handle that?
And do you have that footage so that we can potentially blackmail them?
Yeah, I'm sure they did, only because everyone always does. It's never a disagreement per se. It's more of a, this is what we're going to do. Let's work through it and iterate and get to where we need to be. Because Tom's also the producer of the film, so he's Chris's boss at the end of the day. He's everyone's boss on the entire set.
Right.
So he has a very clear vision for what these movies need to be. And Chris, we think of Chris as an action director now, but that's certainly not the Chris McQuarrie I grew up with. I saw The Usual Suspects and Way of the Gun, and smart guy, who writes smart and had done a lot of script work over the years. And so it didn't feel like, they were coming at, I think they're always coming at a problem from different directions. But again, I think it speaks to their friendship and what we now see as their partnership in these movies, that it wasn't, I don't know if you've heard about Bruce Willis and Kevin Smith on Cop Out, where it sounded like it was pretty volcanic. That wasn't my experience. I'm sure they disagreed, but I don't think it was ever that type of disagreement. I think it was always more, well, how do we do this? Or what's the best way to do this? Or to Tom's point, is there a better way to do something like this? Or did we get everything? Or the knife fighting scene ended up being a big iterative part when he and Wolfie are up on the, they're really up there. They're like 60 feet in the air during that knife fight scene at the very end in the Opera House. And Eddie Hamilton, the brilliant editor, was there. And as soon as they would break camera, they would get footage to him so he could sit there in his little computer on set at LH2, which is where we shot that sequence, and cut it together so that we made sure we had everything. And I think that's where you would see those kind of conversations of, did we get this? Did we get all of it? Do we need more? Do I need to do more? And that's also just Tom's spirit. I think he's always willing to do more to get it right. And so, we saw that for sure.
Wow. Can we talk about the Taurus sequence?
Sure.
And how much, obviously he did a lot of training and holding his breath and all of that. So how much of that were you privy to? Did you have like underwater cameras to go down there with him or anything like that?
We did. And I'm blanking on his last name. His first name is Pete. He is the underwater cameraman for almost every movie in the world.
Yeah, Pete Romano. We've had him on the show. Yep.
Yeah, Pete. So they let us put cameras on their camera, which they were shooting that on what at the time was a pretty new camera, which was an ARRI 65 millimeter digital camera. And so we were able to rig our GoPros and things to that, and also to the rigs inside the water tank at Leavesden to sort of, get footage of it. There's sort of two parts to that scene. There's the water work, which was done at Leavesden, and then there was the jump work, which was done in Southampton. But yeah, I'm telling you, man, there is I don't know if David Caney ever released it. David Caney was the sort of boss at Paramount that I worked with in terms of, delivering the final featurettes to. But there was a video that Kirk Kroc and Tom did, and Kirk was the breathing specialist that, it's about oxygenating your blood and about trying to lower your heart rate. That's how you're able to stay underwater so long. But we gave David a video of Tom, and he's underwater for 6 minutes. And you see it. There's a clock in the corner of the screen. And so it's certainly something that can be done. The reality is when you're shooting, an action movie, there's no way we're leaving Tom underwater that long. Right. It's just too dangerous. And movies are shot in quick bursts, but you could tell that it was exhausting work. It had to have been, because he's swimming, he's grabbing hold of rigs that are pulling him around the set. But yeah, that training was legit. I mean, he was doing it. Again, he's always doing what they say he's doing, which is a little mind blowing, because he's older now too. He's not it's not risky business Tom Cruise anymore.
Right. Yeah, we've heard from some people that they were a little disappointed by how much ended up being CGI in that sequence, but
Most of that sequence that was CGI though was the production design of the Taurus itself.
yeah.
But if you look at, I mean, if I watch a sequence with you guys, I've seen those shots. A lot of those are, I mean, Rebecca in the water, Tom in the water.
Yeah.
It's not CGI of them. It's CGI of the environment.
No, I think what people are upset about is maybe you can't tell that it's them or something, or that it's a little bit obscured that it's really him.
Yeah.
Just because of some of the, there's some computer assisted camera movements and stuff like that. But it makes me think that there's going to be something crazy in the next couple of films. That'll be Tom.
Yeah, I just read today there's something in 7, I think, where they talked about, I guess they're slowly letting this stuff leak. He rides a motorcycle off a cliff in Norway. And I'm assuming he's base jumping or something like that.
Yeah, we saw that footage at Show West. It's pretty unbelievable. I mean, it's him riding a dirt bike off a ramp into a sort of canyon. It's absolutely insane. But
yeah,
what that man won't do.
That's the hardest part is what do you do next?
Yeah, come on this show. That's what he has to
We
do.
thought he was going to, after Rogue Nation, we thought he was going to jump from space. Like Felix,
yes.
What was the guy's name? Felix Gardner or Baumgartner, the guy who did the jump.
The Red Bull guy, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be Tom. I was like, Tom's just going to jump from space. And then it ended up being the Halo jump, which is its own, special kind of challenge.
Yes. Do you have any more good Tom Cruise stories? Because we always love them.
I'm trying to think. Let's talk about it. I think in the prompt, it will probably, I'll think it'll remind me of something that kind of comes up.
The motorcycles? Were you there for the shooting of the motorcycles?
Yes. Are you talking about the one in the sort of the canyon when he's
Yeah.
Well, that was shot in 2 different spots.
Because weren't they were actually, Tom Cruise was actually going over 100 miles an hour on those things, right? That's what we've heard.
Yeah, there's 2 large sequences that they cut together. One of them was we had closed down a highway, which is one reason we were shooting in Morocco outside of Marrakesh, and that's the one where he's kind of just free riding at full speed. They added some cars, I think, in CGI there, but there were cars stationed like every whatever amount of feet.
Yeah.
And then the second part was about an hour out of Marrakesh up in the Atlas Mountains, and that's the hill work. And part of that was free riding. Part of that they shot on the biscuit rig, just because you have to be able to get a mobile camera platform in there, and you want to be
a biscuit rig is it like the motorcycle is like kind of mounted to a car or something in the camera, and so it's kind of, he's not really riding the motorcycle in that case. I mean, he's riding it, but he's not driving a motorcycle by itself.
Exactly, yeah. He's secured to the rig. Yeah. The biscuit rig was developed for Seabiscuit when they were doing some of the horse stuff, just so they could be in front of the actors. It's still dangerous. You're still going 60, 70 miles an hour with people around you. But yeah, the crazy thing with the motorcycle thing was the wreck that the guy does. I can't not remember the stuntman who does it, but it was a real wreck where he hits something, and in the film you see him flying off, and Tom gets rid of him. But he actually did it. He was going like 40 miles an hour, and then clips the piece of apparatus that he's supposed to clip to knock him off the bike.
Wow.
And we had footage. We didn't use it just because it felt like this is way too personal. And this guy, he didn't get seriously injured, but he got roughed up a little bit. But you can see him just sliding because he's going so fast. He's just like sliding down an embankment on this hill up in the mountains.
Wow.
It was wild. The stunts, the motorcycle stuff was really cool. And I think the biscuit helped a lot with that, just because you can shoot it more creatively, I think, than you could otherwise do if everyone's free riding.
Wow. Seabiscuit,
But here's the other thing too. I guarantee you Tom probably wanted to free ride all of it. But, there are safety issues, there are filming issues, but he's never one, at least in my experience, was never one to shy away from like, let's do it. I mean, the BMW, he's always driving it, in all those sequences in the car chases.
Was there ever a time that you watched something being shot and just had to look away because it was just too intense?
It was the stuff in the Casablanca alleys, because these alleys were only about 15 to 20 feet wide, and they are hauling ass in those BMWs, through there. And there's also motorcycle stuff in there. The one that still I think is the most amazing one, and I think everyone thinks it's CG. It's not, The one where he's driving and then he pulls the emergency brake and spins the car to knock off the two guys in the motorcycle. The car is on a rig that will, that moves it the way it's supposed to move it. But they really shot that. The walls had been replaced with padded walls. So what they had to do is they had to hit the mark with the turn and then have the real motorcyclist hit the walls at the right moment so that they would get the padded wall instead of the real brick wall. And we were watching that. The only way we could shoot BTS for that was we had to go knock on people's doors and ask, can we come in your house and shoot down? Because there was nowhere to go. It's a long alleyway. There's no version of us being in the street. But we didn't want to not get the shot. So we just went into these Casablanca citizens' homes and they let us go to the window and shoot down at some of that action. But that stunt was incredible. I still think it looks so, everyone who watches the movie is like, it was done in CG. And I'm like, it was not. It was absolutely done real. I mean, there's always going to be cleanup work. You have to remove part of the rig and you have to make it look completely real. But in terms of the implementation of it, it was absolutely real.
Were there goons from BMW on set kind of keeping an eye on things?
There weren't, no, but those cars got worked, man. We had, I think, 5 or 6 identical BMWs for that sequence, and they got pounded. They got absolutely pounded.
Well, and the motorcycles too, right?
Yeah, the motorcycles got crunched, and those were mostly factory motorcycles that had been slightly modified, but, and the car was obviously a factory car. So, yeah, they got destroyed. I mean, they just got, and Rabat was even worse when they're going down the stairs. Because we shot that whole sequence is actually shot in 3 different parts of Morocco. Part of it was shot in Marrakesh, part of it was shot in Casablanca, and part of it was shot in Rabat. And they're each a couple hours apart from each other. And those were actually some of the hardest days. When you wake up at 6 a.m. in Casablanca, or even earlier, drive to Marrakesh to shoot, and then drive back to Casablanca so that the next day you can shoot in Casablanca. But the Rabat sequence was going down those stairs. Those cars got completely wiped out doing that, just because,
There was a car cannon, right? Didn't they use the car cannon? They had to stop using it after a few times.
Did they use the what?
The car cannon. Weren't they shooting a cannon? The car. The BMW, isn't he talking about the flipping over into the parking lot where it flips over a bunch of times?
He's just talking about the driving down the stairs.
Oh, no, that's a different one. Yeah, they did that one twice. We actually missed that one. We were getting lunch, and it happened before. It's always hard to, movies are rough because you're working all the time, and you always try to steal a break when you can. And we ended up missing that one. I was so mad because they only did it twice, and then it was over.
Did you ask Wade to drive you around anytime?
I did not ask Wade to do that, but here's the thing I wanted to do with Wade, because one of the things we did earlier during prep was they went out to these racetracks in England just to sort of test drive the cars. And then afterwards, the owner of the racetrack, because Wade is a professional driver, before being a stuntman or stunt coordinator, and they put him behind the wheel of a McLaren. And, he rang it up to about 150 miles an hour going around that track. That I would have loved to have done. And then we did get one. Actually, no, we did get one ride. We got one really early in prep at Buttonwillow, which is just north of Los Angeles, where they were doing some tests there. And they let us get in the car. And I was using a Red, right, which is heavy camera. It's big. And so they put us in the car just to experience what it felt like. And this was probably only going like 90 miles an hour through the turns of Buttonwillow. No usable footage whatsoever. Cameras just flying all around. Like, it's hard. You gotta. That's really why you have to have the right mount, the right camera, the right place. Otherwise, a human being can't control it.
I love that.
The end of Rogue Nation was, I think over the holiday break, they had to figure out what they were going to do for the ending, and I'm curious if you were privy to any of the, what it was going to be before it ended up settling on their, kind of smaller, more intimate ending.
I don't remember it being dramatically different than what it was, honestly. The thing I remember about the holidays was we were shooting that in a town called Woodstock, which is outside of London. It was at Winston Churchill's sort of ancestral home, and we were shooting night shoots there, and it was cold. And we'd been on the movie for, at that point, 6 months straight. And my dominant memory of that was my friend Phil in LA, who works at Netflix now, sent me a bottle of rum, and we all blew off the entire marketing and publicity team blew off the entire night finishing that bottle of rum in one of the trailers outside of it, and then we all went on Christmas break. But I don't remember. I mean, the thing they did shoot a lot more of, we continued to shoot the opera house scene through the end of production. It took them a while, I think, to get that exactly the way they wanted to. Because I think the last shot we ever did was Rebecca's leg going up on the, when she is about to shoot the gun.
Yeah.
I think that was the last shot of the whole film.
Yeah, I think I've heard that before.
Yeah.
And also heard that they were shooting the opera throughout the entire production.
Well, yeah, we shot that thing everywhere. We shot it at the Opera House in Vienna. We shot it on stages throughout the film. I think that was maybe what people are getting at in terms of how the film was different, was sort of my instinct, and I don't know this for a certainty, but my instinct was Rebecca was probably originally thought of as a character in that film and not necessarily an ongoing character in the entire franchise. But as they worked through the script and worked through the shooting and obviously got to know Rebecca, I can see a world in which they realized, wait a minute, we have this incredible actor and relationship, and this is new for the franchise. Let's see how much further we can push this.
I think we've come to the point of the show that I think every guest dreads, and now, Josh, you are going to be subjected to it.
All right, do I have to sing? As long as I don't have to sing, I'm fine.
No, well, you could answer in a sing song.
Singing is encouraged.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's start with hairstyles. I was wondering if you could rank Tom's hairstyles throughout the franchise. Are you a long hair guy? Are you a short hair guy?
I'm a short hair guy. I think it looks a little, I struggle with the Mission Impossible 2 hairstyle a little bit.
Okay.
It's just a little too, it's a little too feathered. So I like the third one a lot. I really like Mission 3. I kind of look at the movies as Mission Impossible is its own standalone thing. Mission Impossible 2 is also a standalone thing, but doesn't feel that related to Mission Impossible 1. And then Mission Impossible 3 felt like that's when things kind of turned again. And that's when I felt like, to me, that's when the Mission Impossible universe starts. Because then I started getting a sense of the history of the character and the idea of, and they tie that up with, with Michelle coming back in Fallout as his wife. So, but to your point, short haircut. So I would probably say 3, because I think his hair was pretty closely cropped in Mission Impossible 3.
Yeah. I mean, 1 is the shortest. 1 is like a buzz cut. But, so that's too short for you.
1 is one, it's, you don't want to criticize movies for things that were out of their control at the time. But I don't think CGI was where it needed to be for some of that stuff to work. And so I do get pulled out of that movie every now and then when I'm watching it.
Oh my God. We won't tell John Knoll, legendary ILM master.
Again, it's like when I watched The Last Starfighter. I love The Last Starfighter, but there were big technical limitations to what you could pull off versus today, where, you just press the button and then it's like, here comes your visual effect.
Yeah.
But
pretty cutting edge for 1996, though.
Oh, no, it looked great for what it was. The ambition is absolutely there.
Yeah.
It's just, it's the thing with visual effects is if you don't believe it, then it can be hard to accept the story point.
Right.
You're watching a movie all of a sudden instead of experiencing a movie.
Well, the other question we ask everybody is, could you give us your rankings of the Mission Impossible movies?
Yes, I think I can do it. Let me iterate it. I will pick 7 first.
Okay.
I think Fallout is the best.
Why?
I think Fallout is the best because it's the first time where it felt like all the things I liked about the Mission Impossible movies all were kind of brought together. I didn't feel like there was no version of things being added for the sake of having another star in there or stuff like that, which movies do all the time because they have to freshen up their franchises. It felt like a really unified whole film, and the scale of it felt big. It felt like a Bond film. It was such a big movie. So I would go Fallout first, then I would go Rogue Nation second. And I will say this, I was surprised by how much I liked it. And I know that's going to sound like a criticism, but when you're working on a movie, it is incredibly difficult to know if any of this is going to work. Because in that day-by-day sort of life, things, you can't tell. I mean, I'm sure you can if you're the director or you're the producer, but if you're just sitting there on set, you're like, I guess this is going to work. I think this is cool. But then we watched Mission and we're like, fuck, this is awesome. This is really cool, Rogue Nation.
Yeah.
So I would say Rogue Nation second. I would say 3 after that.
Okay.
Love JJ's Mission Impossible film. Then I would say 1. Then I would say Ghost Protocol, and then I would say 2.
Wow, Ghost Protocol's low.
Woo!
Look, that was a movie that Bad Robot worked on. It's not that it's you know what it gets to is that, you know, one is like 7.1, one's 7, one's 6.9, 6.8. So there's they feel different between 1 and 4, but the area, the space between them is not large.
Right.
We love them all for different reasons, obviously.
I still think the Burge is still the most batshit crazy thing ever. That's the best stunt in the entire series.
Yes.
And then I would say the plane was second, but the Burge is crazy. I don't know how much you guys have talked to that about guys on the thing who worked on Ghost Protocol, but the way they did that sequence and the state of the tower at the time they did that sequence, where they're literally just knocking at, you know, having windows taken out so they could do that, and it was just crazy.
Yes.
Yeah.
We love hearing about the windows.
Most stunts actually feel very safe. That one felt very dangerous.
Yeah. And there was a toilet that people used at the top of the building that actually sort of had a glass wall that looked straight down.
I think it was gold too. Wasn't it a golden toilet?
It was a golden toilet. It was like the Sheik's toilet or whatever.
Yeah.
So
the other thing, I did have there was one thing in Ghost Protocol that I was like, wait a minute, what? And I haven't seen the film in a while, so I may not be remembering it properly. But there was a moment where when the guy pulls his mask off as they're fleeing, and you're like, wait a minute, if you were always that guy, how did they fool you? You were never fooled. So why did that whole scene happen? Why didn't you just shoot them?
Josh, let me tell you,
we always are so bewildered by that. We've asked the screenwriters, we've asked Brad Bird, we've asked everybody about that moment, and nobody really has a good answer for why that happened.
Yeah. It just felt, because I think it wasn't absolutely necessary, but it just called into question the whole sequence before.
Well, then, and you're also like, is this mask technology readily available to people? Like, who has access to this? You know. Anyway, yeah, we've done a lot of stewing about that.
Before we end up, I do want to say one of the neatest ways that someone got around that issue was McQuarrie and the scene in Rogue Nation where they do the circular shot where it's Simon Pegg trying to put on the thing, and there are no masks in that scene. It's shot with a hollow frame, and then everything on the other side, even the books, are shot in mirror image.
Yeah.
And so just first of all, to conceive of that, and I think Chris said he got it from like a 1950s movie or 1940s movie where you had to figure out ways to do these things, you know, practically. But it works so well. Like, to this day, I watch it. There's like the little pieces that are there are like tiny little pieces of, you know, of foam latex just to sell the pull. But no masks used in the best mask scene in Mission Impossible for me. It's either that one or the Philip Seymour Hoffman one in 3. But that's a great one. And the fact that it's done practically blows my mind to this day.
Yeah, we're obsessed with practical mirror shots, like the Terminator 2 one. Where with her twin. Yeah.
Always cast twins. That's the lesson.
And then the one in 3, is that the one you're talking about in 3? Is that the Texas Switch, where Philip Seymour Hoffman's like pulling at his neck, and then the camera pans off of him, and then Tom Cruise runs in and acts like he's taking off the mask. I love that one too.
Yep,
so great.
Well, Josh, do you have anything you need to plug?
I'm working on my first feature film. It's called Roof. It's going to be shooting here in the next few months. Bella Heathcote and Asif Ali are going to be our lead actors, unless something changes.
Oh, that's great.
He's great. He was just on WandaVision, and she's in Pieces of You coming out, and she was in Relic. She's great. It's being directed by a guy named Sal Sorrentino, who is a VFX soup, making his feature debut, and my debut as a feature film producer, so I'm excited for it.
Wow. Well, when that comes out, come back. Tell us about it. Yeah.
Guys, cheers. I appreciate the time, and I love talking about Mission Impossible, so thanks for giving me a reason to do it. Because my friends are tired of it.
Well, we never tired of it.
Anytime you have a new revelation or something, or go to the sensory deprivation tank and it brings back a memory, please let us know, and we'll have you back.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much.
Take care. Cheers.
And we're back. Charles, how do you feel? We just went behind the scenes of Rogue Nation.
I feel great. It was really cool to hear about the biscuit rig named for Seabiscuit, which we get into later with another interview coming up. We talked again with someone from Rogue Nation. Just as a little tease, coming up, you will hear again about the biscuit rig.
Yes. It has nothing to do with cookies. I think that was the thing that we learned the most. Yeah.
I don't know why it's not the Seabiscuit rig, but it's the biscuit rig.
The biscuit rig. What else? Anything else stand out for you?
I think that's about it for me. It was a pleasure to talk to Josh, and always awesome to hear behind the scenes stories.
Agreed. Well, you have some shout outs to give too. I'm not the only one.
Yes, it's true. I want to give a thank you to Derek Klingel. And also I want to thank our editor and mixer, Luke Burson. And, of course, our composer, Kevin Blumenfeld, for writing our Legally Dissimilar music.
Yes. And we obviously want to encourage people to go to our TeePublic page, check out the merch there, go to the website, see all of the show notes for every episode. So everything we talk about in the episode, if you want to see what that is, go to the webpage, check out the individual episode, and you'll have all that information. We want to tell people to like, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening to this podcast, to follow us on social media at LightTheFuse-Pod on Twitter and Instagram. And just talk to people about this podcast. Go out of your way to say something.
Spread the word.
Spread the word.
Run down the street screaming about how much you love this show.
Yeah, we love organic grassroots campaigns.
Yeah.
Because we can't afford anything else. So please do it. And that involves screaming. Yes. So please. Yeah.
Running down the street and screaming to anyone you see.
Yes,
maybe try to be polite, but scream.
Yeah, you can be cordial and in your face. That's what we like.
Did you mention the Patreon?
I didn't mention the Patreon. Please go ahead, Charles.
Patreon.com/LightTheFuse. We do bonus episodes every week. We are on top of all the latest Mission Impossible news, and we are also giving you everything from our top 5 Marvel movies to whatever, doing breakdowns of franchises like Scream or other properties that we love. And there's also a higher level where you can join us every month for a Zoom chat. And we just our last Zoom chat we did was awesome, and we just released it to all of our Patreon members to give everybody a little preview of what that is like. So, sign up for the Patreon. We love all of our subscribers there. They're such great people, and they help us out so much.
Yeah, if you think you're the only one that loves Mission Impossible as much as you do, sign on to the Patreon, and you will be introduced to many more people who love it just as much. It's a wonderful community.
Yes.
And yeah, we love everybody on it.
Yeah, and also go to our TeePublic page and buy a shirt or a magnet or a mask or a whatever. There's all kinds of items there that you can get, and that's linked from our website, lightthefusepodcast.com, in the merch section.
I did say the thing about the TeePublic page, Charles.
But you did? Okay, sorry.
Go ahead. People need to go. I didn't say the thing about the magnets or the pins or anything. So yeah, there's a lot of items on there.
In case you forgot, since Drew told you, go to our TeePublic page.
It's a lot of stuff,
right?
Yeah,
I think that's everything.
Yeah, we've got some great episodes. You want to tease next week, Charles?
So we're gonna have. I think this is who we talked to about the biscuit rig, right? I think it was David Vickery. I believe it was him, because we talked to a few different VFX people recently. But David Vickery is the VFX supervisor for Rogue Nation, and it's a really great interview talking with him. He is awesome and really funny, and he's also worked on some big movies. He just did the latest Jurassic World movie.
He's also got an amazing mustache, so...
He really does.
Maybe he'll let us share a picture.
He said he would. I already asked him. So yes, we're going to have a picture of his mustache in next week's show notes. Don't you worry.
We need to put that on Twitter too. I think people need to know just how handsome this guy is. So,
I know. Yeah. It was intimidating. Yeah.
It was. But yeah, it's a great episode. We got a lot of great stuff coming up with Light the Fuse and also Light the Fuselage with Top Gun Maverick, hopefully our new favorite movie of all time.
Oh my God.
So
it's so great.
Yeah.
And go see Top Gun Maverick in the biggest screen possible.
May 27th. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you all so much. Thanks again for listening, everyone. And before we go, another mission, should you choose to accept it, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And remember that you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at LightTheFusePod, and email us questions or comments at lightthefusepodcast@gmail.com. This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds.